Hey, and welcome to the Systems Boutique podcast. I'm Dr. Raymona H. Lawrence. Most people just simply call me Dr. Raymona. I'm your systems stylist and your business operations expert, and I'm here to help you build a high-end boutique style back-end that creates ease and scalability for you without sacrificing the luxury experience your clients absolutely deserve. So if you're a speaker, a coach, a consultant, a course creator, or author who's ready to stop the overwhelm, ditch the tech confusion, and finally streamline your systems and operations, you are in the right place. Each week, I'll bring you actionable strategies, expert insights, and behind-the-scenes business systems and operations insights to help you scale with ease, efficiency, and absolute excellence. So grab your notebook, your favorite cup of coffee or tea, and let's get to work. Welcome to the Systems Boutique, where systems meet style. Hey, and welcome to this week's episode of the Systems Boutique podcast. This is a little different, and we're taking a moment to stop and celebrate today. We are celebrating 22 episodes of the Systems Boutique podcast. So we're taking a little time to go back and recap. This week, we're recapping episodes 1 through 11. So whether you're a longtime listener or you're just tuning in for the first time, this recap will give you all of the biggest takeaways from our journey up to this point. Think of it as a biggest hits episode with all of the aha moments just wrapped up into one. So if you missed an episode or if you just want a little recap of what we've talked about so far, you are in the right place. So let's jump in. Let's talk about how this podcast is going to help you with all this. So why did I even create the Systems Boutique podcast? Well, it's simple. You need strategy, not just software. Let me say that again. You need strategy, not just software. So what most entrepreneurs think is that they need another tool. They need Kajabi. They need Thinkific. They need Honeybook. They need ClickFunnels. But what is the real problem here? You don't need more tools. You need a system. So that's what this podcast is all about. I'm here to teach you. I'm here to teach you a few things. So the first thing is how to set up the right automations for your business. The next one is how to streamline your client journey so they feel like VIPs. Don't you want that for the back end of your business and your clients? Then we're going to talk about how to build a boutique style back end that runs smoothly. And then ultimately how to scale with ease, efficiency, and excellence. So every week I'll be bringing you real strategies, expert interviews, and actionable steps so you can stop hustling harder and start actually running your business smarter. Sound good? All right. So if you're still interested in all of that, let's keep going. So here we go. I'm going to talk to you today about some systems that you absolutely need to have in your business. And so what we want to do is to make sure, again, that your back-end systems are as tailored and stylish as the clothes you wear. And so here we are with this idea of bespoke. So that's the first fashion term that I'm going to bring you all. What does bespoke mean? So I started to hear this term as I was researching and thinking about how systems fit. And bespoke is something in the fashion world that means custom made. And so that's what we want. We want custom made systems. When you have a custom made outfit, it fits you like a glove. It is absolutely going to be just fitting all of the curves. It's going to make sure that everything in your body is accentuated. And so it's so much better than being off the rack. And so that's what we want for the systems that we have in our businesses. When we just bring in systems that, we've heard from everybody else, we try to put it together. Often One, you're not understanding the full functionality. You don't know how the systems fit together. So it's just like if you were taking a hammer and you were supposed to be hitting a nail with it, and then what you do is try to eat your food with it, right? It's like you have the full functionality of a hammer. It can do the things that it was made to do, but you're using it to try to eat food, and it just is not going to work. And so that's what happens with a lot of the systems. We have these different CRMs, and we'll talk about what that means in just a minute. We have these email systems. We have things that give us automation and workflows, and we don't understand how to use them. Or we have all of these individual systems that don't come together to make one fully functioning system where our clients can really just walk down the runway from hello to here's my credit card. And that's what we want. So why do we want tailored systems? Right? They should fit like a suit, right? If you have a suit and it doesn't fit, you don't put it on. You don't like it. You don't feel good in it. It feels too tight. You feel awkward all day. And that's what's happening with our business systems, is that we have things that don't really fit. So we feel like our business isn't working. We feel overwhelmed, like we don't have enough time to do the things that we are going to do or that we need to do, because we don't have the systems in place to ensure that things are working effortlessly. And so one of the things that we want to do is to ensure that we have certain systems in place. Today, we're diving into why winging it is costing you money and peace of mind, and how simple systems can turn that around fast. We need the systems, okay? So listen, I know you didn't start your business to be stuck in this never-ending admin work. You started to make an impact, and let's be real, to make some money. So let's talk about why not having systems is holding you back. All right. You know what we like to do. Grab your tea, grab your coffee, get your notebook, get ready to jump in. So let's talk about the first thing, the cost of no systems. Okay, so let's get real. What happens when you don't have systems? First, you know this feeling of constantly reinventing the wheel instead of running smooth workflows. It's like, here's another shiny object. Here's another thing I could be doing. You don't want to keep reinventing the wheel. You're losing money on missed opportunities. There's dropped leads. There's all these inefficiencies. You're working way too hard on things that could be automated. And the worst thing is that you're feeling overwhelmed and burnt out. So if you're doing this, if you're spending hours sending follow-up emails manually, no. If you are tracking invoices and random spreadsheets, no. If you are chasing down contracts and proposals, double no. Posting on social media just when you remember, absolutely not. So if you're doing those things, your business is running you instead of the other way around. So we want to get out of that. Let's think about the systems shift that you need to make. So what if I told you that with the right systems in place, you could have a fully automated client onboarding process? You can wake up to money in your account while you sleep, and you can stop chasing people for payments because your system does that for you. So you can free up your time to focus on what is your absolute zone of genius. So all of this stuff you're doing in the back end is my zone of genius, but it's probably not yours, right? So this isn't just about saving time. It's about creating that freedom that you have been craving. And that's exactly why in the Systems Boutique, we don't just throw tech at the problem. We build luxury level boutique style systems that keep your business running smoothly.
The biggest mistake that people make in this industry, I think it's just quick to create something and not having taken the time to build it out right. right? They see, for example, they see all the people that I've worked with, and they, I've helped people make over $1 million in sales of curriculum, right? So once they see that, they're like, oh my God, I need a curriculum, but they're not willing to put the work in to actually build it out right? So they can completely understand it to a T and be able to walk into a classroom and teach it that looks familiar to a educator that's been there for years, right? That takes time, that's understanding, right? To take your content and put it into a classroom setting where the kids are getting stories, getting activities, getting things that go well within a classroom setting for 45 to 60 minutes, sometimes 90 minutes, right? So taking the time to actually understand the intricacies of what a classroom looks like, how to make the teacher's job easier, because everybody thinks a curriculum is just for the students. Honestly, the curriculum is for the teachers to be able to make their job easier. And when you make their job easier, there's the money, because there's money for teacher professional development, right? And tapping into that aspect will help you get resources for students and continue to be able to problem solve in more than one area. So being able to take the time, not just have resources, but have resources that you can really dive deep into the content with to support these people that are using your materials. So do not rush, take your time, do it right, and understand it so that you can actually support. You're not going to make these big sales if you're not, like I said before, living it, breathing it, eating it, doing it. It becomes a part of your lifestyle. It becomes easy to teach because you're doing it on a consistent basis.
That's good. And I think that we could all say that as part of each one of these industries is that people just jump to things. And that's what I was talking about earlier, right? Is that we live in this microwave type society where we want to just have things quick. We want to have the result, but then there's no impact. So something has happened, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's a good thing that has happened. There's just a result, and it's not what we wanted. And so I love that. I think that is paramount to the work that we do, is taking your time and not just jumping into things, because back to Coach Arletta, somebody's life is on the line with everything that we're doing, right?
Coach Carlos, like, are you going to take my entire statement though? I mean, I had something very, very, profound that I was going to say. You jumped in there before I did. No, to bring that back around, people believe the hype. That is like the number one trend that I see amongst most of my clients, is that they come in believing the hype that they see on social media. They see the big stages, they see the 20,000 people crowds, and they automatically think, I'm going to be there in a day. And if I told you that I have a 14-year career and I just started making like the real revenue 7 years ago. So the first 8 years I spent the block. For the first 8 years, I was stagnant. For the first 8 years, I was knocking on doors that I had no business knocking on. For the first 8 years, I did all the things wrong. And so the reason why you need a coach is because they help to cut the learning curve. They cut back on some of those years. So you don't have to spend 8 years, spinning in the same area like I did. Stop believing the hype. If you want anything to happen in your life, there is a process to it. No one gets a chance to go straight from A to Z. There's a whole lot, there's 24 other alphabet in between, and we got to reach those. And so one of the greatest things that I help my clients with is foundational principles. If you're going to become that great speaker, if you're going to be the next Les Brown or be the next Tony Robbins, if you're going to be them and you aspire to be like them, they endured some things, and it's beyond the private jet, the limousines, the nice hotels, and the big crowds that you see screaming their names. You don't know the price that they paid to get there. Yeah. And there's always a story behind greatness. And so I help them to define those 8 principles that they need in order to build out a sustainable career as a public speaker. You need to have certain things in place in order to sustain it, because it's one thing to obtain it. You can land one speaking gig being paid $10,000 to be on the stage for 1 hour. You can land it. But how do you sustain it? How do you continuously land gig after gig after gig after gig, where you become the asset that everyone is searching for, the highly sought after speaker? because no one wants to be borderline anything. We always want to be exceedingly abundantly above, And so if that is your desire and that's what you want to see happen in your career, you're going to have to do the work, and you're going to have to put this process into work, lay the proper foundation from your authenticity to knowing your audience, to receiving accountability, to understanding your authority from the stage, to your appearance from the stage, to automation and systems that it takes to be able to run a sustainable business, because a speaking business is a business. It's not just you looking cute from stage. It's not just impact. It's not just influence, but it's also income. It's something, most of us, it's our living. It's our sustainability. It's our livelihood. So you got to treat it as such. You got to put in work. And so that's the thing I think that kind of separates not only the style or understanding what type of, what speakers are looking for, but you got to not neglect the process. And I think Carlos said it better than me, but I thought I'd reiterate.
That was good.
That was good. That was perfect. I was just sitting back like, preach.
No, that was so good. Right. But I think it goes back to what I love what everybody's saying, because we're all speaking this. We're like speaking the same exact thing. And I think when you talk about mistakes, a lot of people, because of the ads that we see on social media, we want 10x, 20x, 4x ROAS, all these different things. And I always go back to the biggest mistake is X never had a value, but you want 10 of it. Right? So you want a 10x, but X is 0. So you can understand, like, having something as much as a mustard seed, if I got 0.1, then let's amplify it, let's scale. But a lot of people want to scale without having substance yet. And so I think it goes in alignment with everybody's plan, is we gotta make sure we have something. And I think too many times what happens is when you feel like you have nothing, you feel like you gotta have 10x to kind of make it even. And it's like, no, listen, I understand your past is your past. You're trying to work towards the future, but you really got to do the work in the present and be here where your feet are to really be able to go and enjoy and sustain, like Coach Arletta said, to sustain that level of success, because the climb was hard, but the fall is even harder.
So let's talk about if somebody's messaging is a hot mess express right now. Okay, we know it's a hot mess. We're listening to you. So what's the first systems that you think we need to put in place to turn from this chaos into some more clarity and really get that brand messaging aligned?
I think the number one thing you need to realize, like, this might not be the answer a lot of people are looking for, and that's okay. I'm okay with that. But you really have to ask yourself, why is it chaotic? Why isn't my messaging working? And if you are showing up consistently online and you're posting content and you're having conversations with people and nothing is landing, you have to ask yourself, why isn't it working? I always start with the core message of your business. What is that foundation message? And so I'll give you an example. The core message of my business is that I work with women who have lies, labels, and limitations placed upon themselves, and I work with them to remove them. So that way they can show up and show out no matter where they're at. And so because I know that that's the core message of what I do, I know moving into content or messaging or offers, a lot of times the women that I work with, they don't know how to have these conversations because of those labels and limitations, right? So my core message is the foundation of my business. And then I have this messaging that's for my offers. I have this messaging that's for maybe even certain services that I have, and just overall, like my power messaging, that one sentence, that one liner that knocks them out, everybody knows. And so I always tell people, do you have a core foundation? At the core of your business, why you exist, is there a core message? And so I would start there first. What is the core message, why you started your business? And then everything else that you do after that has to be in support of that. Your mission, your vision, all those things. I don't create anything if it goes against my core values. And if it does, has my core values changed? Do I need to make an adjustment? But if it goes against my core values, I don't create new messaging that goes against that. And so if your messaging is a hot mess, ask yourself, is it in alignment with my foundation? If it's not in alignment, then who do you serve and why does that matter? What do you offer and why does that matter? And what's the transformation? What ultimately gets your person from A to B? If you don't know those things, your messaging will not stick. It will not stick at all.
As a book doula, what's the first system that an aspiring author should birth to move them from this idea to a published book?
No, great question. The answer sounds very simple, but it's so important to make sure that you have it in place, right? And I call it the 3 W's. In the 3 W's, you're asking the question of what am I trying to say? Who am I saying it to? Why does it need to be said? And then the other part of it is, why are you the one to say it? When we have those questions answered, it eliminates what I've seen to stall a lot of people in birthing their books. And that's the clarity, right? Like clarity to know, okay, if I'm talking to 18-year-olds, it already tells me what I need to say, how I need to say it, and how much of it I need to say. They're not reading books. So this is not the audience that you're going to say, hey, you know what? Here's a 300-page book for you to read. Well, then you're not going to get the outcome you're looking for, nor are you going to get the impact. And ultimately, you would have done all this work and have provided no value whatsoever. So when I ask these questions, and when the people who are the most successful typically have those answers top of mind, because in some other arena, maybe it's not in a book, they've already established what those things are, whether it's in their coaching clients, the people that they speak to, the people that they consult with, the partnerships that they have. They typically know, I say the same thing over and over again. I say it to the same people all the time. I'm not talking to everybody. I'm speaking to somebody very specific. And the purpose behind it is like it's relatable and it's relevant. That's the purpose of the whys.
Let's be real. Okay. So most people, they really overcomplicate their course. So they're going into the education system. They're going into places where they need to educate people, whether it's in the education system or not. And so they really overcomplicate it. And another thing that we talked about last week in our episode with Coach Gio was that people forget how far they've come. And so they go back to teach a thing. And when they go back to teach a thing, they're so far removed from it that they only speak from their privilege that they now have, right? And so tell us, what's one system that can take a curriculum from just this idea of overwhelm or this feeling of overwhelm to being organized?
Well, that is a great question. I love that. And the first thing that I would say before I get into specifically what systems is people pay for those who are familiar. People pay for those who are familiar and people that are specific. I think people, when you're creating curriculum, you want to be a la carte and try to fit so many that you don't even belong in. I think when we talked about earlier, alignment, knowing who you are and what you're about, and your work has to speak that. You have to live in that space of, I am my work, right? You're a representation of it, right? And that's where you want to lean into. When you overcomplicate it, is because you're trying to fit or trying to be in more spaces than you need to be, right? You lose your identity. So the system that I would primarily advise my clients and people that work with me is to be very specific as to who your target audience is, first and foremost. Once you find out your target audience, you're able to look at the gaps that need to be filled on your particular road. Look to the other roads on the side of you, right? Look at the road in front of you and fill those particular gaps. And that is what made me successful, right? And along the way, people see that I specifically know how to fill these gaps. And then I become more familiar because people see me filling these same gaps. Then on the outside that have reached a little further, they'll look back and be like, oh, they'll reach back and they'll want to work with you and they want to help you and networking. That's how it actually happens organically. But you have to stay on your own road. It sounds, cliche, but it is very true. You have to stay in your own space, focus on the gaps that are in front of you, and become a problem solver for the situations that you can be a master at, and focusing on continuously getting those repetitions in, on filling those gaps and working your craft and be able to support in those areas so that then it becomes easy for you to identify it sooner. So then you become the person that's familiar to those people dealing with the same issues.
That's good. And so I know that a lot of people have this issue where they're trying to be way too broad. They see everything that everybody else is doing, and they want to ensure that they have a little piece of that. So how do you help people to get beyond that and to really hone in on what it is that they do? What is one step that we can take to say, this is the thing that I'm going to do versus seeing all the things that everybody else is doing and wanting to do a little piece of everything?
I think this is my biggest strength, and I advise all leaders and coaches to think this way. When you are a leader, I think about these two pictures, like the leader that pulls and then the leader that pushes from behind, right? You want to do the latter, right? You want to be the person that pushes from behind. So there's a lot of observation. As a leader, you become more of a student. And I say that because more questioning happens, more investigation happens. I get to know you personally. When I coach you, I want to know you as a person, right? And I want to know what makes you tick, what makes you go, what makes you move, act. And those are the things that you should be focusing on. You can't say, hey, because you've been in this space, you may not be good in this space, right? There's so many people that have jobs and careers that they just fell into it. They weren't necessarily good at it. There wasn't their calling, right? To say, so I would say, I love this part of the work that I do as a coach. I get to know you. It's a relationship thing. It's not networking is all relationships. And as I'm working with millionaires and billionaires now, I'm learning more and more, like, it's all about relationships, organic relationships. And how do you build that? By getting to know people on a higher level, on a deeper level. It's not about you talking more. My job is not to talk more. Yes, this is a podcast and you're asking me specific questions. My coaching sessions, I talk less because I want to get to know you. When I speak and when I do engagements and workshops across the country and internationally, I found that I get paid more to speak less because I facilitate engagement. And when you're thinking about curriculum, you want to set up your lessons, your activities to facilitate and engage action, because people learn by doing. And if you can connect stories to an activity that gets them to do it and give them a memory of like, holy cow, yes, I know I did it. I remember doing it in this workshop. Then they take it in real life. That is what you want to apply. So I think that's the biggest thing, is getting to know your people and connecting those real relationships. Because when you know someone, it becomes easier to help push them in the right direction.
Mm-hmm. And that goes into this idea of outcomes, right? Because that's what we're looking for. We want to bring about transformation in people's lives. And so I have taken your course, your curriculum course, and it is excellent. And I know that we talked a lot about how do we get people to that outcome. And so I want to ask you about that. So let's think about this course or this curriculum like it's a road trip. So what GPS system would you recommend to make sure people don't get lost on the way to those outcomes? So we got to get to the outcome, and now we need the GPS. And so what do you recommend?
You know, I love me some acronyms. I love me some acronyms. So I would start, especially if you're doing K-12 and corporate in particular, you want to take it back to the basics. You want to take it back to the ABCs. Attendance, behavior, connections. Schools usually have one or two of those issues in their schools. And if you can create solutions to those problems, right, that should be your GPS. So before you even approach a university, a college, a corporate organization, you should do your research and find out what are their ABCs, right? And another acronym specifically in college are the RPGs: retention, persistence, and graduation rates. All about that. So the GPS, you need the ABCs, and you need the RPGs.
Okay.
Get on the right GPS.
I love it. Okay. So we definitely can remember that. Okay. Here's something else that you're very good at, is helping us to get to the learning outcome. So I just learned something: the ABCs, the RPGs, and that is our GPS, right? Awesome. And so as we're thinking about that, when people are designing a system, right? They're trying to get the ABCs, the RPGs, whatever it is that they need. What's a common mistake that people make when they're designing that curriculum? And then how can just some sort of simple system prevent those mistakes?
Yes, I think the first thing is, as we said earlier, you try to fit in spaces that you don't. Like, say a school, they need your services, but then they say, can you also do this? To jump and say yes, even if you don't. I think that's the biggest mistake. I think your system should be set up to stay in these particular areas that you can adjust and you can align. So, for example, I'm the head of education for a new company called Open, where it has connections to, it's basically a company trying to help students understand the integral parts of being a successful business man or woman, right? And you learn about time management, conflict resolution, networking, business strategy. So I can take that and say a school is dealing with behavior, right? I will take pieces of that curriculum that will help the conflict resolution, the networking, right? Knowing how to build relationships, right? So I would say is staying true to your specialty, because that's where you can shine. If you try to come out of your scope of sequence that, hey, I can try that, you can lose people, right? You want to be doing too much. Keep it. People pay for what's familiar and what's specific, and stay on track with that when you're developing your system and you're presenting and demoing your system. Stay true to that and stay in that lane. And eventually, the more you do it, the better you'll be, and more people will hear about it.
How do we get to the point where we're beyond that 24,000 and we can really just start to pay ourselves and not just make ends meet?
Well, I'm gonna tell you, I'm just gonna keep it 100, right? The way that we do that is we stop winging it, right? We have to start winging it and start treating our business like a business. And how we do that is, one, we first begin to learn how to manage money. So, I mean, let's talk about it, since we're talking about, the Black culture and minorities. We weren't grown up. We weren't, grown into money, right? We weren't spoken to about money, in our households, because we didn't have any, right? Many of us didn't have any. So, even speaking about money is like it's like a taboo conversation. So what we have to do when we become these first time generation business owners and millionaires, we have to learn how to manage that money. Making more money doesn't mean that you're going to automatically know how to manage it. That is an absolute myth. It's like when Biggie said more money, more problems, that's a real thing. Okay. That is a real thing. And so how we get from breaking these statistics is that we learn. That's the first step. We have to learn. And the reason why we don't is because of shame, right? We're shameful that we've been in business 3, 5, 7 years and we don't know. And so it's hard for us to come to someone like myself and say, I don't know. But that's a level of humility that we just have to listen. We got to swallow that pill. If you want to get past that 24,000, you want to make that first million, that's a pill you have to swallow. And recognize that when you come to someone like myself who is non-judgmental, that's the first power that you give yourself.
That's so good. And, we talk about knowledge is power, but knowledge with action is real power. And
that's big power.
So I have gotten to read this book, you all, and it is absolutely phenomenal. It takes you through this deep personal journey. And I know we had on episode 3 where we talked to Coach Arletta, and Coach Arletta said, what we want is to move people out of seeing you and have them see themselves in that spot. And that's what this book does. It doesn't just say, this is just Coach Carlos. It says, here I am in this situation and let me move through this personal journey. And it just helps you to identify so deeply with the story. And so, Coach Carlos, you took this huge personal tragedy and you moved through this deep personal transformation through this tragedy. And so tell us how this tragedy shaped your approach to creating systems, whether that be in your business or just in life.
No, absolutely. I think, I wouldn't wish this upon anyone, right? To have to go through this. My father committed suicide in 2019. And even with the No More Dancing is a love letter to my father. So people could understand what goes into that happening in people's lives. I think people just get caught up in like, how did it happen? Or he was okay, or she was okay. And, as I said before, building systems, not only in my business, but I say this a lot, aligning it to my lifestyle, right? Being able to be this person as a husband, as a father, as a friend, as a brother, as a son, right? To be able to have these difficult conversations so that when the work is in the way, right? Or you have to do it for, within organizations and schools, right? It becomes natural. Right. And people can feed off of that. I learned very quickly within schools that kids can smell fake from a mile away. Right. And so can people. Right. Adults can sense that very quickly as well. So I think finding alignment is the biggest system that I set in my life. The work reminds me of the stuff I need to do when I get home. Right. I am who I say I am in all aspects of my life. And I think that is the main purpose of my work in my life. And the tragedy that happened with my father, getting that call and being in complete shock and then turning into the person that had to keep everybody up and calm everybody down and be there for people where I didn't take time to process. And then when I processed, I was like, who am I now? My wife, and I talk about this in the book as well, my wife asked me a pivotal question, right? Because for so long, my father allowed me to use him as a measuring stick, right? And then when he was gone, she asked me, who are you now? And I couldn't answer that question. And that was something that struck me. Couldn't answer that question immediately. And that's where the work started, right? To be able to build this alignment in all aspects of my life. And that's how it has been the biggest challenge, but yet the biggest blessing at the same time.
Yeah. So that's so powerful. And I know a lot of people struggle. They really struggle to turn that pain into purpose. So I applaud you for how you've been able to do that. And so tell me about the mindset shifts that help you to really systemize that growth and transformation. And, it's weird to use the word systemize because I don't think there is a system for grief. I was talking to a friend about that yesterday. There's not really a system that you can follow and say, this is exactly how it's going to work, right? But how did you turn that pain into this purpose and start to, as you say, translate? So we now translate this tragedy into how you work with schools and curriculum?
No, I think it's, your lifestyle and having those around you to challenge you. I think they say this all the time, who you have around you makes a difference, right? So having those people to challenge you, not be afraid of those moments to confront you when you need to be addressed or corrected, especially during this time. I credit my wife a great deal. Melissa was great in being able to find pockets to, push buttons to challenge me in ways that I did not want to be challenged. I did not want to hear it. I did not want to do it. And pushing me to be able to do so. One thing that she pushed us to do during this pivotal time was for us to become debt free, right? And work on our finances and figure things out so that what happened to my father wouldn't happen again, right? In lifestyle, right? Not just in your work, right? But in all aspects of your life. One of the stresses for my father and many people are finances, right? Going into retirement, what are you going to do? You're not working anymore. Who are you? How are you going to make money? Did you save while you were young? These are the things that stress people out and lead to them, not wanting to be here anymore. And that was one of the stresses that my father had. So her challenged me in the midst of the grief to be like, hey, what are we doing? How can you do this in honor of him? We can't just stay still. We need to continue And it became a big purpose. I seen the picture of, my grandfather, my father's father, jumped in front of a bus when he was 4. My father jumped in front of the L train in New York City. Now, my mission, I saw me on the ledge and asking myself, do I want my daughter to ask, why did he jump? And that became my complete mission moving forward. But to answer your question, once again, I think it's having those people. I had my friends as well, Dr. Bowie, that we went to college with, that I went to college with. He would challenge me. I had people, everybody around me was challenging me in ways that I needed, and I had to be receptive to it. So I think the system is being open to being challenged, accepting those challenges and applying those things to your life so that you can better yourself and not just get through it, but understand it so that you can use it. And that's what I've been able to do with this book, No More Dancing, with my curriculum work, with my coaching. I've been able to apply what I learned through that traumatic event and understand it more than anybody could ever understand it, right? So that I can use it. Right? And I think that's the biggest thing. You don't just go through tragedy and talk about it. You got to process it and understand it so that you can take it and teach it and apply it. So that's the biggest system that I apply to my life.
How do we impact people while making money, not just making money, but making a profit? I was talking to someone else that was talking about finances the other day, and we're talking about how do we make a profit? Well, if words are wealth, we've got to start and learn how to use our words properly, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So how do we know, I'm going to veer off a little bit with this question. How do we know that our words are working? So what are some of the key things that you see or that we can look for? We're not expert copywriters like you and all of this. So what are some things that we can look for when we can, that help us to know if our words are working?
Okay, yeah, this is actually a great question. So in my space, we oftentimes talk about key performance indicators, and you may commonly hear this reference as KPIs, right? And so I will answer your question in relation to email marketing, but I'll explain a bit more in terms of social media. So in the email marketing world, the key performance indicators that you really want to pay attention to are your open rate, meaning that, what percentage of people on your email list have actually opened this email. It's very common when you have a smaller list. And when I say smaller, meaning anything that's under about 1,000 contacts, is pretty common to have very high open rates. So high being like 50 to 60%. Okay. So the open rate is very important. And if you're noticing that a lot of people are opening your emails, that's a good sign, because that means that, A, you have some credibility, right? And then B, your subject lines are capturing their attention. So that's a really good sign. The next KPI that we look at is the click-through rate. And that one is oftentimes referred to as CTR for short. The click-through rate is exactly how it sounds. It's the percentage of people that have opened the email and actually clicked on something in that particular email, right? Something being a link to a checkout page or a landing page or a link to download your book, so on and so forth. And so when it comes to your click-through rate, you're looking at primarily about 1%. 1% is decent. It's a good baseline to kind of start from. But of course, the higher, the better, right? Because this means that, okay, one, I've gotten over the hurdle of getting your attention, because we know that the inbox is very crowded, just like social media is very loud. B, not only have I gotten your attention, but now my words have encouraged you to take action, which would be to click on whatever link that I have in the email. I'm encouraging you to do something. So the third and final KPI that I'm going to mention now, and of course there are others, but I'm just going to mention like the top 3, is your conversion rate. So conversion being like, okay, I have asked you to do a thing and you did the thing. Because let's be honest, there are distractions all around, right? I will be checking my email and then I get a text message. Well, now I'm out of the email app and I'm answering the text message, or I get a phone call. Now I'm not reading the email as much anymore, right? So we have so many distractions hitting us at any given moment. So the conversion rate literally means that whatever you ask that contact to do, they actually did it.
And so your conversion rate, it varies. I would say a baseline would be somewhere between 10 to 30%. But again, to be honest with you, it really does vary. It's contingent upon the price point of your product. It's contingent upon what you're asking people to do. If you're asking people to download a free white page, for example, that's totally different from asking someone to commit to a $300 per hour consultation call, right? So your conversion rate is, again, just, the percentage of people that have opened your email, B, clicked on a link in your email, and now C, actually did the thing that you're asking them to do. And so those are the primary key performance indicators.
As a result of a lot of that pressure, of a lot of the things, I found myself in rock bottom burnout. And I had to come up with a way, learn a strategy, figure out a new approach for life. Because, Dr. Raymona, I don't know how to be half in. I don't know how to play. I don't know how to pretend, and I don't know how to fake it. If I'm going to do this thing, I'm all in. And being all in without the proper strategies took me straight to burnout. So, as a result of what I learned in recovering from burnout, I've been able to publish my first book. I'm able to travel this country speaking and leading workshops and giving folks, I call them purposeful professionals, the strategies for how you pour out purpose without continuing to live in the consequences of burnout. So, my whole life right now is serving purposeful professionals and helping them stay out of this vortex we call burnout and still pour out purpose. When you're in surviving, it feels like you're on the roller coaster and you really wish somebody would stop the ride just for a moment so you can catch your breath. You don't want to quit. You don't want to run away. You just need a minute. When I talk to people who are in surviving and I say, "How are you, friend?" they often say, "I'm fine." Well, how's your business? It's fine. How's your family? It's fine. It's all fine. I want you to know fine is a mask word. And fine can mean a lot of things. Fine may mean if I told you, you wouldn't know what to do. So I'm fine. Fine may mean I don't even have the energy to have this conversation with you right now. So I'm fine. Or it could mean I don't know myself. I just know something's off. Something's wrong. If we don't do something different in surviving, then we move to the phase I call overwhelm. And overwhelm, it feels like the water level of your life is rising and you are fighting to keep your head above water. Where in surviving, you wear your professional mask very well. You need community in your life who do not compete with you, but who complement you. Because all of us, especially when you are trying to deliver a message that is life-changing, when you are trying to bring forth purpose, you have to expect resistance. You have to. You have to expect that there's going to be a challenge. If there is no challenge, you need to question the quality of what you're giving. So when you know you are delivering to the world something that is transformational, you have to have people around you. You don't need 100 people, but you need the right people. You need the right people. So this book is my journey, Dr. Raymona, from rock bottom burnout to discovering my brilliance, and not just my testimony, but the testimonies of women that I've had the opportunity to serve and coach and walk alongside. How do you bring yourself from the crushing weight of burnout to this place full of, you may call it purpose, I call it brilliance, that innate, unique impact that you bring to the world like nobody else? Do you even know what that impact is? There are so many authors and speakers and consultants and folks who are working. You're working, but you don't even know the value you bring. You don't know the impact that you make on people. This book guides professional women from that overwhelm, from that surviving, from that burnout place, through the strategies we call heart work, to this place of fulfillment, of brilliance and purpose. And that's what Disrupting Burnout does.
So let's start to talk about that, because burnout is real. But at the Systems Boutique, we really believe that overwhelm is often a systems problem in disguise. So, how do you see the lack of boundaries? Because I know you talk about boundaries in this book. How do you see the lack of boundaries and structure playing into burnout, especially for high achieving women or these high achieving speakers, coaches, consultants, authors?
Absolutely. I'll start by saying boundaries are not a fad. We're having these conversations about boundaries because we see it on social media and it sounds good and there's some new books out and all of that's great. But it is so critically important for us to understand that boundaries are protection. How do you protect what means most to you in the world? Let me change that question. What are you unwilling to lose? What are you unwilling to lose as you continue to pursue your dream and your vision and your business? What are you unwilling to lose as you continue to pour your life out and your heart out to serve other people? What are you unwilling to lose? I agree that lack of boundaries and burnout is a system problem. So in order to protect what means most to you, what systems can you implement into your life that serve as a fence or a guardrail around what means most to you? It may be family related. So, oh my gosh, being a solopreneur, your business is your whole life. Like, it is everything. There's no 8 to 5 around here. It is 3 a.m. to 7 a.m. Then you pick it back up at 11. We don't have the structure of 9 to 5 all the time. We're often working from our homes because we are it. Like, it's on us. We're on all the time. So even more reason that you have to have some systems in place in order to protect what means most to you. For example, maybe you need a system of a morning routine. Maybe you start with moving your body, investing in your spirit, investing in your mind before you jump into client requests and emails and building the launch and doing the things. And what that does is it helps you protect your mental health. It helps you protect your spiritual health. It helps you protect your body before you dive in to do the work. And often those things feel like the things we don't have time to do. Like, I'm a business owner. I don't have time to do this and that and do this and that. But those are the things that are going to sustain you. Because you're no good to your business if your body's not working. You're no good to your business if your mind is cluttered. If your heart is overwhelmed, you're no good to your business. So maybe your system is, I need to set a wake-up time and honor it. And for the first 30 minutes, for the first hour, I'm going to invest in me before I start to do the work to invest in other people. So that's just one example of how you can implement a system as a boundary that will protect you from overwhelm.
A lot of times we show up because we're excited. We have our content pillars. We know what we want to say. And because we don't get the engagement or we don't get the likes, the comments, the algorithm is algorithming, and we stop showing up consistently. And so there's two things that happen. One, you lose momentum, and momentum is everything when you're putting out a new offer, you're getting ready to launch, or you want to just sell consistently. And number two, you lose trust with your audience, because if they can't trust you to show up for your business, how are they going to trust you to show up for their business and to give them the same type of momentum and the same type of love when you can't even pour that same amount of love into yours? So I always tell people momentum and trust are so important when you're showing up consistently online, because people don't buy from brands that they can't feel or trust. Like, if I can't relate to you or trust you, I don't want to buy from you. So that's the two things.
That's so good. And that's such a great way of thinking about it, that if I don't see you showing up, then how are you going to show up for me? That you won't even show up for yourself. And a lot of times we often have something good to say. We have great things to say. And we were just talking before we started to hit record that we're not in middle school anymore. So we don't have to be afraid of, oh, I'm posting about my business too much, or I'm posting about this thing that I love. I'm posting about my kids. I'm posting about whatever, because you're not in middle school. Who cares? Post the thing, because it's going to help somebody and it's going to draw the audience that you're supposed to have into your space, right?
Exactly. And I always tell clients, treat your consistency like, and I love that you said middle school. The way a middle school boy dated you is completely different than a grown man dating you.
Okay.
So you want to treat your business like a grown man is dating you. How do you want that man to show up? Do you want him to buy you gifts? Do you want him to take you on consistent dates? Do you want him to wine and dine you? If that's the case, you should be showing up the same way in your content.
That's good. Good stuff. So let's talk about doing this without burnout. We talked to Dr. Patrice Buckner Jackson last week about burnout and just the general burnout in business. Now let's move this down to content burnout. So what does a realistic, and I'll say chic, content strategy look like for a person who is an extremely busy CEO? You know, they may be like me. I have a full-time job and I run my business. So how do we get this content done? How do we get this visibility without burning out? And we're doing the parenting, trying to keep our lashes in place.
Lord, as I lost a few, you were like, oh, Lord, I hope y'all don't see him. I'm sorry. Y'all, listen, lash life is a real life, okay?
Yes.
I know you just asked a very important question, but lash life is a real life. Lashes change your your whole day.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to take a moment for that. But let me say this. When it comes to burnout, I could talk about this all day. We might have to do an episode on burnout. It's knowing your limits. It is knowing your limits. And I find that a lot of business owners have never been in a position to know their own limits in their personal life, so they don't know their own limits in their professional life. If you struggle with setting boundaries with you in your personal life, you're going to struggle with setting boundaries in your business life. This isn't boundaries with other people's. These are self-boundaries. This is self-trust. This is self-discipline. And so that is what leads to burnout, because you will watch me and you will say, I want to create content like Coach Rocky. And I tell people all the time, you will not be able to create content like me, because the way I create content is actually kind of maniacal in a sense. So if I expected Dr. Raymona to create content, even if she came to me as a client, I would tell her, no, we need to figure out what works for you. And so when you realize like, okay, this works for me, that's when you start to implement your own system. So if I had to create like a simple content system, number one, what is it that you want to say to people? Instead of thinking about creating, we need to think about communicating. And when you get out of a creation mindset and think of it as I'm communicating with my audience, communicating with my potential prospects, then it becomes an easier conversation, because creation actually scares people. You mean I have to sit down, I have to create, I have to write, I have to make a video, versus just communicating. And what does communicating look like for you? That can be in your stories, getting ready with your makeup. That could be creating a reel or a video. That could be posting, writing something. How do you want to communicate with your audience? And then set aside time to actually schedule and put that out there. Because as busy moms, I'm a mom, I run several businesses, and people always ask me, how do you put out so much content? I schedule. I think ahead, plan ahead, and then I schedule. And then after I schedule, I add in some automations, right? Because I can't be everywhere. If I want people to communicate with me on a post, I might say comment B-Day. And when they comment the word B-Day, it responds to them. Can you imagine how hard it would be for me to be out with my daughter at choir practice and having to respond to every B-Day comment? So that's why I put systems in place and I automate certain things, so that way it supports me and my everyday life so I can run it. So that would be my 3 things.
And that's a wrap on our recap of episodes 1 through 11. It's been absolutely amazing revisiting these powerful conversations and key moments. And if any episode sparked something in you, I highly encourage you to go back and listen to it in full. But guess what? We are not done. In our next episode, we'll continue this journey and we will have a recap of episodes 12 through 22. It is packed with even more breakthroughs, game-changing strategies, and conversations you do not want to miss. So make sure you're following the show and share this recap with someone who's ready to catch up and grow with us. Until then, thank you for listening to the Systems Boutique podcast. We'll see you on the next one. Bye. All right, my chic CEOs, that's a wrap for today's episode. If you found value in today's conversation, do me a favor. Subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode with another star. That's a speaker, a teacher, an author, or a coach who absolutely needs it. And hey, if you're ready to finally get your systems together, let's chat. Head over to thesystemsboutique.com/strategy to book your systems style strategy call, where we'll map out your perfect business back end. So until next time, keep it chic, keep it systemized, and keep shining like the absolute star you are. See ya.